Welcome back. Electoral Act Amendment, the National Assembly passed into law. Both houses. Question we ask, were they acting in public interest? The last half an hour thereabout, we've been speaking with Mondo Barney, former first vice president of Nigeria Bar Association. But now we are going to move over to Abuja, where we have a number of guests who will be contributing to today's discussion. Arms-Free Ajanaku, Programs and Communications Manager, Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education. Great to have you join us this morning, Arms-Free Ajanaku. Excellent. And together with Arms-Free, we have Anthony Oseme. Anthony Oseme is a human rights lawyer and a public affairs analyst. Thank you very much, Anthony Oseme, for joining us on NEWSHUB this morning. All right.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Excellent. So let's begin with Arms-Free Ajanaku straight away. Arms-Free, let's get your reactions. You're closer to where all the action happened last week, and I'm sure that unlike Mondo Barney and I, you're not in a state of confusion about what to make of all that happened and transpired as the Electoral Act Amendment bill was passed into law was passed by the National Assembly.
Yeah, so my initial reaction to what transpired is that, first of all, what is at stake here is the struggle for good governance. What's at stake here is the struggle of the Nigerian people to ensure their voices and their votes count in the electoral process, and not just that the voices, those voices and those votes, as expressed democratically in elections, translate into outcomes that the people actually want, and the aspirations of the people are met. So the other point to note is that it is important to look at these issues from a practical point of view. I'm an election observer, as a civil society activist who have been on the field, and we have seen some of the issues that this amendment, the original amendment process, tried to address, which is the fact that the world-level collation of results is the weakest link when you talk about the integrity of the electoral process. And it is that way because we must understand where the issues are. For instance, you need to talk about how the results itself is being collated at the level of the world. After voters vote at the polling unit, this result is brought together at the world. At that point, we have seen a lot of issues. And when those issues come up, those issues tend to compromise the credibility of the election. And so what the original idea of the amendment sought to do was to remove all those hindrances, all those encumbrances that the people superintending the process experience, and the voters who have voted, when they are expecting results, the time it takes for that collation to happen. Electronic transmission of the results would have just removed all that, all those issues, and allow for the process to be much more transparent. So we would have been able to address a real fundamental aspect. So, but what the National Assembly has done now in subjecting the electronic transmission process to the National Assembly and the National Communications Commission has actually defeated the purpose of the amendment. And what that has also done is that it's going to affect the confidence of the vast majority of Nigerians, because people will just feel that, okay, this is more of a partisan thing. The party in power is the one to dictate the pace and determine what should be the outcome of any election, especially the collation process. So on a general view of it, I think our own perspective from civil society, that this is not helpful for the electoral process. This is taking us back, especially when you also realize the fact that in the Edo and Ondo governorship elections, INEC introduced the results viewing portal, whereby straight from the polling units, the results were put up at that portal, so observers could easily see the trend of an election. They could see where the votes were going, and they removed all of those hitches, that come with the coalition process. Hitches around the fact that you won't have an INEC staff who don't have the arithmetic competence to even collate results. You've had situations in which results for House of Rep is put for Senate. All of those problems that come with the coalition process are the things that this amendment sought to address. But this decision reached by the Senate, even though some of those concerns they raised about connectivity, network issues could be valid, but they threw away the baby with the bathwater in this position they took.
All right, Anthony Osemeoke, who joins us from Abuja. So nice to have you on the program once again. Before we even go further, let's talk about the issues that held at the Greenhouse Green Chamber, I beg your pardon, on Thursday, where it was very obvious that the one who presided over that plenary on that day, that Deputy Speaker Idris Wase, ruled out the resounding voice of the people who want for the transmission of election results in spite of a vote in favor of the move as against the ones that were for it. And he said that they had it. And that brought about a walkout by some people. What would you say the action of the representatives at both the upper and lower houses, the actions towards this particular bill? What does this speak to you as an electorate in the country, the impact we may have on the electorates when they start to think about the people that represent them?
Yeah, thank you. The actions of the members of the National Assembly actually is a pointer to the fact that they are not representing us, they are representing themselves. Because they are supposed to speak for us. They are our voices in that institution. So the fact that they are voting against electronic transmission of results and given those conditions that INEC will have to get the approval of the National Assembly and the NCC, is creating another mischief when you are trying to cure a mischief. In so doing, it is clear that the mandate and the interest of the electorate is not in the mind of those who voted against electronic transmission of results. I can tell you we've been part of this system. We've been there and we know how these things are done. You'll see results coming from police station after the result is collected at the polling unit, voting, declared. In between the polling unit and the collection center, you see a lot of drama, to the point that you find out that you see tampering of electoral results. And you now find out what the agent of a political party has is different from what is being collected at the collection center. So you find that the mischief is there. And the intent of the essence of this amendment is to cure this mischief. But now we are seeing a different thing. And that tells us that, of course, it is even against the Constitution. Because INEC is supposed to be independent. The Constitution allows INEC to be independent. And if you are now subjecting INEC to another institution, it becomes a problem. And it is anti the Constitution. And of course, the Electoral Act Amendment just passed by the National Assembly, if you go by the provisions and the spirit of Section 1, Subsection 3 of the 1999 Constitution amended, it's null and void, it's dead on arrival. Because it is contrary to the Constitution. As such, it is inconsistent, and as such, it is null and void. So, our representatives should, as much as possible, know why they are there, and try as much as possible to ventilate the will, the aspiration, voices of people they are representing. And it goes down to our party level. You find that these are the reasons why we people we elect as party executives, party leaders, should as much as possible adhere to the core ideals of our political parties.
It's because when you now have this money politics of bringing people who don't have the interests of the people who don't have the competence to understand how to mitigate the interests of these people to a point where we now have a better society, we have things like this. And that is why you see all over the country, you see party bickerings here and there, and INEC itself is being caged. For example, in Anambra State recently, you found out that INEC was asked to do a congress, and they did a congress and had somebody in Africa. And before you can say Jack Robinson, some other person was declared to be the governorship candidate for Abga in November 2016. November 2021, the election is coming up. But thank God, the people's will was truncated. But thank God, through the instrument of the court and the wish of the people, brought back Honorable Chuma Umoji as the candidate of Abga. So these are things we are talking about. You don't just bring someone from nowhere and make him a candidate. Somebody doesn't have the will of the people. Somebody doesn't have any relation, any coordination with the people. It's a problem. And as such, I think the National Assembly should go back and look into this amendment. They should go back into the amendment before they come back to society, come back to their ward level, come back to the various constituency, and find themselves as strangers. Something has to be done. The amendment is dead on arrival. It is creating more mischief than the mischief it tends to cure.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anthony Seme. Let me speak with you, Baris Ali, and let me get a little bit on your right to vote as an electorate. And you, I believe, you have your representatives in the House, and of course at the Senate. How did your representatives vote? And did they really speak for you?
They did not. Well, I didn't see my senator. My senator happens to be Senator T.L.G. I don't think he was in the floor of that house that day, so I don't know what he would have voted for. I looked out for my representative in the Federal House. I don't think I also saw him. Maybe there are those that absented themselves from the proceeding. But the truth of the matter is that over 80% of Nigerians today, if you ask me, they are interested in deployment of technology in our electoral process. The undue interference of the human factor in our electoral process over time has not helped us as a nation. We usually see this issue of ballot snatching, we issue of manipulation of electoral results, and then falsification of figures. That has been our bane in our electoral journey. So Nigerians come together and say, let's try as much as possible to use technology, which is what is applicable all over the world. And that process have determined fairness and credibility for those nations. So I see no reason why in 21st century we are still debating. To me, it's a thing of shame. If countries like Ghana and smaller nations in African continent have used technology and they are rejoicing today because the electoral process is a bit fair, we, who happens to be the giant of Africa, we have members who will go to the House to represent us, telling us that we don't have enough network coverage. These are issues of governance. Is it not a thing of shame that we're talking about coverage? How many years now we have been enjoying telecom services, and we have not been able to boast about up to 90-something percentage coverage in the entire country? It's an issue of governance. If Nigerian government can budget 4.something billion to the security agencies to monitor social media platform, of Nigerians, why can't they vote billions of naira in order for us to have network all over? You have 2 years before 2023. By the way, I have said it, NCC wouldn't have been the proper party to call. The telecom operators should have been the one to be invited, and then even the INEC themselves supposed to be there in order to give an update as to their readiness and the level of total coverage in the entire nation. But they now brought NCC as a regulator, so they can't give an opinion that will actually be right. So I think that everything was just planned in order to have their way. But Nigerians are now saying, no, we cannot allow this to happen. In 2019, some of this technological thing was deployed, and we have had it subsequently in other elections that involve Borno, involve Edo, involve Ondo, and involve even states like Plateau. And elections were transmitted electronically, and there was fairness in the process. So why are we not going backwards? So I think the best thing is that to answer your question, I don't see people who were elected from my state representing me concerning this issue of the vote, and also many Nigerians, and I think that many Nigerians will want electronics to be deployed in the next election.
Indeed, Mondo Barney. Let's get to Amsfree Ajanaku in Abuja. Amsfree, there's things that come to my mind. A big point Mondo Barney makes about the electoral process. You're a giant of Africa. I was elections in Senegal in 2013, Ghana 2012, and I saw electronic transmission of results happen. Even in Kenya then, I remember in 2013, I saw electronic transmission of results happen. And I remember Tahiru Jaga was there, and he was asked the question, why don't you have this in Nigeria? And he said, maybe one day we'll get there. That one day hasn't come, unfortunately, in the eyes of the National Assembly. Well, help me understand this thing. If memory serves me right, in the run-up to the 2007 election, you had the constitutional review happen. Senator Ibrahim Mantu, then the Deputy Senate President. And the third-term agenda was, unfortunately, what took the shine out of that document. The entire document was thrown, like they say, literally, the baby with the bathwater, and we didn't have anything happen in 2006. People say history is replaying itself here. They're setting fine parts of this Electoral Act, but for the past how many weeks, even before the report was submitted by either the House of Reps or the Senate, we've all been stuck on the electronic transmission of results or even electronic voting. What do you think? Are there fears that this document is now jinxed because of electronic transmission of results?
Okay, thank you so much. I think we should not throw away the components of the documents that that are good, that have some elements that would improve the process. And technically speaking, the question of the National Assembly was really being clever by trying to say, okay, we didn't vote against electronic transmission of results. What we're actually saying is the practicability. But the original amendment that was presented said, INEC, it left that leeway for INEC to, look at what is practicable when INEC is on the field. And, when you have an innovation, it doesn't mean that there will be no challenges with respect to that innovation. There will definitely be challenges, but what improves a process is that when you confront those challenges, you definitely learn, you learn certain lessons from the challenges you confront while you're on the field, and those challenges help you to then do some lessons learned, and you get to improve the process. So, like it has been well stated by my colleagues on the panel, Edo, even the first election after the COVID-19 pandemic, some of these innovations started being introduced by INEC, and we can see the value that the result viewing portal started. So in approaching the discussion around the electronic transmission of results, I do not think that we should throw away other elements, but it's just that alongside the electronic transmission of results, there are also the elements of the increase in campaign funding, which is another element that we should also look at critically, because with that element, it means that our electoral process, in terms of people coming out to contest, which has now been an exclusive preserve of money bags, will continue to remain that exclusive zone, because how do you expect somebody with disability who is just a citizen with bright ideas that want to participate in the electoral process, talking about 10 billion, where is that person going to find that kind of money from? How do you talk about youths, young people who are also supposed to be active participants in the electoral process? How do they come into the electoral process and participate when you have to compete against deep pockets that would just overall you in the process? How do you also talk about women who are marginalized in the electoral process? How do you talk about their participation? If women who are already economically marginalized, they don't have the war chest to even compete at the time that the funding, the campaign funding window was even lower. You now jack it up. So I think what is happening is really an attempt to ensure that people who are part of the citizenry, who are even campaigning for fresh ideas to be brought into our political space, it's, all of this is an attempt to push them out. But that's not to say that the document is completely, the amendment process is completely bad. It is also not to say that all of these concerns around connectivity, around network issues, it's also not to say that those concerns should be dismissed completely. But what I would have expected the National Assembly to do is to get INEC, get the NCC, get the network providers to sit down. I mean, in villages across Nigeria, even in far-flung parts of Nigeria, in rural areas, you have POS. You can do POS transactions in villages, in far-flung parts of Nigeria. You can look at all of those issues and use your baseline of where you are and what is possible. You can move it on. The original amendment did not cast electronic transmission of results in stone. It did not say if there's network problem, then INEC must go ahead to do electronic. It didn't do that. What he said is where practicable, based on practicability as INEC is on the field. So, other aspects of the amendment that are okay should go through, but these particular ones should, be looked at again, because what the message that the National Assembly is sending, to the rest, to the vast majority of Nigerians is that the popular participation of citizens in the governance of their country, something that is guaranteed in the Constitution, is not something they are in tandem with. It's not something they are in support of, and this is a very sorry pass for our democratic process. The National Assembly should take a look. The House of Reps even did some little good in terms of the fact that they tried to consult, they tried to ask INEC, but the Senate did not just do anything at all. They just went ahead and declared that NCC and the Senate, have to be the ones to determine what happens in terms of electronic transmission of results. If they had just said, let NCC and INEC collaborate, let there be, because these are two national institutions, they are national agencies, let there be synergy. Okay. That synergy would have been a good thing for the electoral process. But just to say, to create a two-step encumbrance for INEC is not a good thing at all. Because you are talking about on the one hand, and you're also talking about the Senate approval on the other hand, which is unacceptable to the Nigerian people. All right, I'm Sriya Janoku. Thank you so much for your submission this morning. Now, let's cross over to our Port Harcourt studios where we have Henry Aquino, a legal practitioner, standing by. Henry, good morning. Nice to have you join this conversation this morning. All right. If you can hear me, we're trying to seek how the public feels, so across board, about how their representatives have voted so far during the deliberation on the Electoral Amendment Bill. How did your representatives vote? Did they speak for you?
Well, I've seen the list in the Senate. My representative at the Senate, of course, voted not quite in my interest and the position that I feel. And I think also largely in the position that most of her constituents have demonstrated, and of course across the country. That much said, I think that she has only expressed her opinion as she felt. I do not think that that was quite representative of the position of what the constituents, including me and a number of those around me, hold. To that extent, I think my position, therefore, means that I think that the National Assembly would have been more pragmatic, seizing this opportunity for them to demonstrate their will and commitment to strengthening democracy, not just the comments they may be making on the floor of their respective chambers or in other fora. But this was an opportunity that came to them as a test, and a very big one at that, and I think they haven't quite lived up to expectation, and that's why it is the talking point now. And then Nigerians are actually commenting on this in the way that it is. And that's why we're here. I think apparently I've said something somewhere that you could imagine all of the clauses that were considered in the Electoral Act Amendment. And what appears to be the center of the talking point is in respect to the manner of conduct of elections and then of transmission of results. So I've come to perceive any electoral law, and I think I've come to the conclusion that apart from the other probably introductory provisions of how the electoral body may be established, and then the constitution of that body and the powers the body may have, here the Independent National Electoral Commission, and of course political parties and regulating political parties, how they could be formed, and then how their activities could be monitored, and of course even registration of candidates for elections to be able to vote, I mean citizens to be able to vote during elections. But what is most critical and at the center of every electoral act is the manner, the conduct of polls, elections, the voting proper. And then secondly is the manner of transmission or collation of results, polls, and determining results. So if you lose this critical component of an electoral act, then of course it becomes a document that the people will reject with all the strength they've got. And that's what is happening. The National Assembly has lost really the confidence of the people in ensuring that we have a credible election. And that would have snowballed into a proper, effective governance of the people and strengthening our democracy. Because when we have a system where popular candidates and credible, competent candidates usually are not returned during elections, then you will have an ineffective government. And then, of course, that's the problem we have always had in this country. And that's why it has become the concern of all Nigerians that we indeed reform our electoral framework, legal framework, to the extent that we have a perceived credible election. But I think moving forward, looking at 2023, if this is the instrument we're going to have transmitted to the president for his assent and eventually assented, then I think that we still would have the situation we have had, even the mischief that one of the guests has spoken about, that we sought to redress, and then we seem not to have utilized that opportunity to cure that mischief. That mischief remains. And all of the ugly experiences we have had in our electoral process will remain, because it will mean that there would still be the challenges that we have had and the lack of confidence in the electoral process. And then there certainly won't be credibility. But let me speak about one aspect of the passage of the bill by the Senate precisely, which everybody seems to have spoken about. It is to me an infraction of the provisions of the Constitution, the extant provision of the Constitution. Section 153 established the Independent National Electoral Commission as one of the federal bodies, and particularly as an independent body. And to that extent, even when the power for appointment and constitution of that body is given to the president, it particularly stated that in the case of INEC, there shall be no interference. So INEC is expected to be a body that shall not have any interference, to the extent that we are attempting to give legal backing of an external institution of government, and even the National Assembly itself, to do what? The power of INEC to organize elections, to determine the manner of elections, and all the other components of the electoral process is independent and exclusive. To bring in the NCC is disturbing, and then of course, sorry please, INEC has always consulted with other bodies of government whenever they are to conduct elections. Why not give the power absolutely to INEC? They will seek whatever agency of government they need any support from.
All right, Henry.
If it will be
right. I'm sorry I will have to interrupt you. We're going to go on a quick break. We still have plenty of time to drill into this talking point. It's NEWSHUB, and we have an erudite panel this morning looking at the Electoral Act Amendment with the National Assembly. Who's interested in the act, public or their personal opinions? Please stay with us. All right, welcome back. Momentous season in Nigeria's politics. We count on the 2023 general election, but one of the most important instruments is the Electoral Act, in which the country can have those elections happen, and it's now mired in controversy over what exactly happened with the National Assembly in its passage last week. We have a great panel here with us. join the conversation, all of them virtually. Mondo Barney, Amstria Janaku, Henry Kine, as well as Anthony Oseme. Anthony Oseme, if you think about what happened, you look at the National Assembly's leadership and what sort of roles they played or did not play in bringing us to this point. Ahmed Lawan, I recollect, and even Femi Gbajabiamila, when there was stories out that the electronic transmission clause had been taken out, had taken great pains to convince the public, asking the people to go and talk to their representatives in both houses to make sure that whatever their demands are, whatever they want to happen to the Electoral Act, be passed across to them. But on D-Day, how they prevailed is a different matter entirely. Ahmed Lawan sat on the seat and watched all of that happen around him. Femi Gbajabiamila's case was an entirely different scenario. He left his seat for Ahmed Wase, the deputy Speaker of the House. But interestingly, over and over again, Femi Gbajabiamila did intervene, asking the clause by clause to go on, and they come back to electronic transmission, calling for certain interventions. And you wonder why he wasn't even presiding in the first instance if he had to be passing out information from the sidelines. Leading us to the question, so what was the usefulness or the uselessness of what they tried to do to get the people to get their views to their elected representatives? Anthony Oseme.
Yes, it is quite funny. It is funny in the sense that the Senate and the House of Assembly, the House of Representatives, who have, before now, those appear to be, we'll be looking at them suspiciously because how they emerge and now whatnot. And like my colleague just said, it is a time for them to have redeemed their image and opportunity to showcase themselves in the hearts of the average Nigerians. And asking us to, our reference to go and get to have our say through them. I think the problem we have with the House of Rep as members of the National Assembly in this light is they tend to see the issue about the electronic amendment, the amendment in the light of the party line, and not in line with the interests of the vast majority of the people of this country. Because most of them that voted against this amendment were those who are of a particular political party. And if you look at the trend, it appears it was voted within party line. And as such, the interest of these members was not for the majority of Nigerians, but they are there seeking the interest of their party. So that in the forthcoming election, something can go in their favor. We've been, like I told you before now, we've seen a lot of problem alongside these things. But then because of the party interest and not the interest of the people, and that is why we found ourselves in this logjam. And this logjam will make us a mockery in the eyes of the international community. And mind you, the intent and purpose of this amendment, is to take us to a point where we can adjust our electoral process to be, if not free and fair, but almost free and fair. And as such, it will take us to a point where we will now find ourselves having electronic voting. Because at this time we are talking about electronic transmission. We will get to a point where we will talk about electronic voting. So at that point, certain interests of money politics, certain interests of vote buying may not work. Because at that point, I may sit in the comfort of my home in Anambra, you will be in the comfort of your home in Maiduguri, somebody far in Bayelsa will be making a vote, voting for a candidate of his choice. And if that, the electoral process will now go to a point where we will now have even independent candidates. So it's a process. And those who are afraid of this amendment have nothing to be afraid of, because INEC has come out to say that they have the capacity. They have the capacity to do these things. And now, if there are any challenges, like my colleague just said, You can do money transfer from Maiduguri. You can do money transfer from Sokoto. You can do money transfer from Ibadan. You can do it from everywhere in this country. So why don't INEC, instead of subjecting INEC to the ways and caprices of the National Assembly and the NCC, why not, like I said, bring these people together, invest money in INEC, so we have a very strong institution. If we have a very strong institution, we would have good results, good output for whatever duties assigned to them. The Senate and others asking us to meet our duties doesn't hold any water. What is important now is that they pass this act, but with this act, vis-a-vis the Constitution, stand the test of time. The state amendment sought to be made. Will it stand the test of time vis-a-vis the Constitution? I heard somebody saying to say that if the people feel, the amendment is not in line with what they're doing, and we should go to court.
All right.
You can imagine when somebody we are elected to represent us is asking us now to go to court against him. And all this is absurd. It's absurd.
I can imagine, Mr. Anthony Oseme. Thank you for your submission. Baris Ali, 158 clauses really deliberated upon, but 52 subsection 2 has brought about this controversy. What can the electorate do at this point in time? Is this clause enough for us to throw the entire bill away, or what should we be doing at this point in time?
I don't hear very well. Okay.
Baris Ali, you want me to come over it again? Did you get my question?
Okay, are you hearing me now?
Yes. Did you get the question?
I forgot that I muted myself. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm the chairman currently of section of Public Interest and Development Law of the Nigerian Bar Association. And we are saying that if this particular amendment that is clearly unconstitutional is allowed to be assented to by the president, then we will challenge this amendment in the law court. We're already preparing the process, but if we go to court by now, if it is not assented to, the court will decline jurisdiction because there has been no law yet. But if the president assents to that particular bill, the way the Senate has amended it is clearly unconstitutional, and we have a right to challenge it. And I think they want it because they know our judicial process. If you win at the lower court, they will go to Court of Appeal, and maybe that particular amendment may not be used in 2023 election. So they are all planning to drag us through this route in order to ensure that there is no amendment that will be done towards 2023 election. And it's very, very scary if we can go into the 2023 election with this bill unamended. I mean, with the law, the way it is, present law. You know, you remember what my colleague has just said, you know, that we have come a long way in our electoral journey. And we are even moving towards issue of electronic voting. And these guys now want to retard us and keep us where they want us to be, maybe back to 15th century. So I said that the only thing we can do, we can't carry knives, we can't carry guns, we can't do anything that is clearly illegal other than to resort to judicial intervention on this. And I'm very sure that the judiciary will come to the rescue of Nigeria with regards to this violation of the Constitution. They cannot, in the act of lawmaking, violate the law that they swore to uphold. So that's the only thing that will be left for us to do. But then we must also engage in aggressive advocacy, which is what we are doing right away. You see how many of us that are here on the panel, and all in favor of allowing deployment of technology for us to conduct a free and credible election in this country, because we know where we're coming from. Nigeria has not made any progress whatsoever as a nation because of inept and bad leadership. And the recruitment process of leadership is key. If we don't get our electoral process right in our recruitment process, we will continue where we are even in 20 or 30 years' time. And we're saying there must be this aggressiveness on advocacy for us to have a country all of us should be proud of. We are not proud with this nation. Other nations have moved forward. Remember that in election in Ghana, this man that is presently the president lost an election. And he was very, very happy with the laws because the electoral fairness, you know, was very evident. And he said that never again will Ghana go back to Egypt in terms of electoral, violence and all that. And they have keep on improving. So the next election, the man won. Because he even said it that Ghana has made some level of progress with the electoral process. So how is it that all these smaller countries, all these smaller nations in Africa are moving forward? Nigeria, that it claims to be giant of Africa, is not making any progress whatsoever. These guys want to take us back. And we are saying no. With our level of education and sophistication, with our level of knowledge, these guys, if they don't know anything, we must teach them what they should know and do for us. I may not be in the house, because I may not have big pockets for me to win election as a senator and all that, but I can be able to speak concerning my nation. I should be able to know what happens in other nations. I have traveled far and wide. There is no continent I have not set my foot upon, and I've seen how things work there. So we should be able to tell these guys that they cannot take us back. We must move forward. So that is the thing. So I'm saying that the only thing now we will do is to wait for them to assent to that bill, and they will now take it off from there by going to court to seek for judicial intervention. And we are with Nigerians, and majority are supporting us, and with God, we will be able to have a country all of us shall be proud of. That is the way to go. Let's engage in this aggressive advocacy. And I'm happy with the panelists, and all over. I listen to many programs today on television and radio. All are saying the same thing, that we need deployment of technology in the electoral process because of what we have suffered in time past.
So, Mondo Barney, for taking out time to speak with us. Mondo Barney, former First Vice President of Nigeria Bar Association. It's great having you on NewsHub.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. I have another appointment. Some people want to also speak with me on radio and television. Please oblige me this time. I appreciate the panelists.
Thank you very much, and do have yourself a great week. We're going to move back to Port Harcourt. Let's speak with Henry Kine, and on some of many of the talking points all the panelists have sort of agreed on. If you think about it, I want to move a little from the electoral transmission, Henry. I'm going to come back to it also too. But there was some interesting part while I watched the House of Representatives proceedings, where Femi Gbajabiamila had sat down to watch proceeding, because I was wondering why people kept asking me, why isn't he sitting on his seat? Why is Wase over there? And he jumped up at some point when he got up to clause 87, and they said clause 87 hasn't happened yet. And I said, well, let me see what is in clause 87, why he's so interested in that clause. And it turns out that it has to do with direct primary and indirect primary. And he got up and had a little speech about the ethos of democracy, saying that they expunge from that clause the word indirect, and saying that it should be mandatory that the parties will elect their candidates through the direct means of election. And that went through. And I sort of wondered why it's important that should happen, or is it not important? It's not one of the things people have talked about, but I do foresee in the coming election and the primaries, it will have some huge ramifications. Henry, what are your thoughts?
Yes, it is also one of the points that is of interest to all of the advocates of a strong electoral legal instrument, and of course to strengthen democracy. So that democracy then should be looked at from the very beginning of the process. If we focused only on the general elections, then of course we may have, as they always say, when the foundation itself is faulty. So it's important that we have deepened democracy or that kind of direct election in the political parties themselves. Now, it is, as it is, our extant law, the Constitution and the Electoral Act.
I'm sorry, I will have to interrupt you, Henry. Henry, I'm sorry, I'll have to interrupt you very quickly. We'll come back to you right after this break. Please stay with us on NewsHub.
For protection from what's coming.
All right, Dom, what's next? no matter how fast you are.
I am not to be compared to you.
No one outruns their past.
I am more easy, you trying your best to become me.
And mine just caught up to me. Been a long time down.
So we're up against a master thief, assassin, high performance driver. Who is he? Please tell me that's not a Pontiac Fiero strapped to a rocket engine?
Impressive. I know.
No. No, that's not impressive.
I came here to take you down, little brother. That's your mistake. This is my world.
They got a magnet plane?
Hold on.
Tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. There's no bridge!
Oh, hell no.
Hey, guys. Surprise.
Nice clubhouse.
All right, welcome back. And such an intriguing discussion, you cannot take your eyes away from it. And it's what we're having today about the Electoral Act Amendment. And we've had panelists all the way from Abuja, Port Harcourt, and in Lagos here. Discussions have continued and will continue even after today's show. We were with Henry, but I understand Anthony Oseme has an urgent appointment. And I'd love to hear his final thoughts on this one very quickly. And we get back to Henry Kine. To talk about the internal politics and the need to protect whatever is left of it. So, Anthony Oseme, your closing thoughts on this one?
Yes, my closing thoughts will be that Nigerians elected leaders to represent them. And leaders that are elected to represent the generality of Nigerians should have the interest of the people they are representing. Because posterity will judge every one of us about our acts and deeds. Nigeria belongs to every one of us. And if we are making laws, we should make laws for good governance, laws that will benefit the general populace in Nigeria. We should, as much as possible, political parties should, as much as possible, field candidates with integrity, candidates with passion for the positive development of this country, candidates that are ready to take the country from where we are to where we ought to be. In the Committee of Nations, we are lagging behind. So we need people that will have the interest of this country and do things, and also try to make sure our electoral processes, if not adjudged free and fair, should be almost free and fair. I want to call upon the National Assembly to revisit this amendment and try as much as possible to reflect it in the November 6, 2021 election in Anambra State. The national election is coming forth, and the parties and the imbroglio should also, as much as possible, play within the line of the law. in everything they're doing, they should try as much as possible to key in the line of the law and make sure that the parties, the candidate they are bringing for the election should be the candidates that have the will, the interests of the people. And I thank INEC for trying as much as possible to heed to the cries of the people of Anambra by giving or having the name of Honorable Chuma Umoji as the APGA candidate for Anambra State government election to come to November 6, 2021. I pray that this mischief that the National Assembly tried to correct will not lead to another mischief.
Right, public.
Part of our processes.
Right. All right, Anthony Oseme, thank you very much. Anthony Oseme is a public affairs analyst as well as a human rights lawyer. It's been great speaking with you. Let's get back to Henry Aquino. We still have Amsri Ajanaku also in Abuja. But Henry, you were on the party politics around the direct and indirect primary, indirect, which the National Assembly has kicked out and said it's now mandatory that the parties will elect, choose its candidates through a direct method.
Commendable. It's been a mischief that we have had in the political parties, especially during the build-up to general elections, where the political parties will have their own process of selecting or electing candidates to represent the parties. I was saying that our extant laws, beginning with the Electoral Act and of course the Constitution, it is seen today that these political parties are on elections in Nigeria. Despite the defections and then the cross carpets in the floors of the National Assembly. And this time, even in the executive, when governors could move from one party to another when they already have got the tickets. But apparently, we see that that's the position of the law. And that's why it is important, and it's always been so, that we've advocated that the independent National Electoral Commission, being the regulator of also political affairs in the political parties towards the electoral process, should look into this. And then it's commendable the National Assembly has sought through this amendment process to take away that undemocratic process of electing candidates to represent the political parties, because there usually would have been divisions and then members of the political parties, some not given the opportunity to express themselves as to who will become the flag bearer of that political party. So it means now it is not about election, that is the choice of a political party. Some may even have it in their constitution. I say it's constitutional in our party to have both direct and indirect, or either of these. It has become extant now and then become mandatory by the law, if passed the way it is. That's all political parties. And why is it important? It's important because we have to strengthen democracy at all levels of the process. So beginning with the political parties in determining who will be the candidate eventually to run in the general elections, it should be seen to be free, fair, transparent, and credible. Not just about even making it mandatory that should be direct. Even where we have had direct primaries in political parties, we've also had issues and disturbances and infractions. Sometimes you would hear that INEC probably even monitors or observe these elections in two different places. I think beyond just making it mandatory that it should be direct elections, it should be really a concern for INEC and of course for all of us. So if the National Assembly has taken that step, it's commendable. And then just to add about what the NBA committee chair said, even the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, for which I speak as the National Publicity Secretary, we are determined to ensure that as soon as it gets to that position, that point where it becomes mature for an action to seek redress in court, to interpret the provisions of our laws, and then to invoke the powers of the courts, of the judiciary, to put a check to what the National Assembly is doing today. I think the National Executive Committee of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights is also taking the same step, that we will challenge if that's a bill passed through and gets to the assent of the president, because it's unconstitutional, it will be an infraction to the provisions of the Constitution, and of course, by the provisions of our Constitution, that will be inconsistent, and it will be void to that extent of its inconsistency.
All right, Mr. Henry Aquino, we'll still come back to you before we round up on the show, and my next question will go to Amsri Ajanoku after this very short break, and it will center around the next things that people should be talking about moving forward after this break.
You can now stream Silverbird News 24 live on mobile app. All you need to do is to download Silverbird News 24 app from Google Play Store on your Android devices and App Store or on your Apple devices. Tap the live button at the bottom bar to watch us live 24/7. You can enjoy all our news programs, including Pidgin News and program. Silverbird News 24. The news never stops.
The big question still on our lips this morning, the action of the National Assembly members and the decision taken so far concerning the Electoral Amendment Bill, in whose interest? That's the big question this morning. Mr. Amsri Ajanoku, I did say that when we return, we'll be taking the question to you. You are the Programs and Communications Manager, Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education. And I would say that since all this drama began at the National Assembly, we've been hearing people like you, Baris Ali, then of course Baris Ali talk about things about looking for redress when it gets to that point. But I'm not sure, maybe I stand corrected, it doesn't seem as if electorate really know the gravity of what is going on, because the conversation seems to be very, very low-key. Are you thinking the way I'm thinking?
Thank you once again. I think this question really goes to the heart of the discussion around participation, around the involvement of citizens in the governance of their country. And for us to show as Nigerians to the National Assembly that this action we've taken is something across the board, across the country, is being rejected. We need to show that there is a pro-people movement behind us, that is, there is a movement of citizens who do not like what is happening, who outrightly reject the direction the National Assembly has taken. And the only way to do that is that, apart from the initiatives of like going to court, litigation, public interest litigation to reverse and put the electoral amendment process on the right footing, I think it's also the role of civil society, it's also the role of professional groups, it's also the role of artisans, different groups across the country to come together and then start sensitizing people at the grassroots. Because if you look at it, given the the problems of insecurity we are facing in the country, given the economic emasculation of the citizens we are seeing, inflation, the economic strangulation of Nigerians, with very terrible economic policies that are really affecting people. A lot of Nigerians are struggling with bread and butter So it is somewhat a huge sell for you to start, talking about electoral process. Not so many Nigerians at the grassroots are really following the conversation, and it's our role. We cannot say because the citizens are not following the conversation, we just throw up our hands in the air and give up. No, we can't do that. We can't afford to do that because the destiny of the country is at stake. So it is our role. It's the role of civil society organizations, professional groups, artisan organizations, grassroots organizations to start doing that process of sensitization. And it's on this note, like, I want to really, really commend Silverbird Television for the quantum of time that provided for us to ventilate on these issues, to communicate with Nigerians on these issues. Should be more conversations, especially at the grassroots, using mass media institutions to propagate this message that the electoral process is the foundation of the pyramid that holds the superstructure together. If you do not get that foundation right, the issues we are complaining about in the economy, the inflation we are complaining about, it is the leaders you recruit that would address and fix those issues. The high maternal mortality we are complaining about, health institutions we are complaining about, that the fact that our educational system is nosediving, all of those things are predicated on the quality of leadership you have. And if you do not have the right quality of leadership through the electoral process, you would remain in that mirage of discussing those issues over and over again. Because I make all this point because at this point we are still even talking about the electoral process, how it should transmit results. We have not even started talking about the core ideas of development. How do we want to develop the country? How do we want to take over 13 million children, out of school who are roaming the streets of Nigeria? How do we want to get them into schools? How do we want to address?
Okay.
All right, we're going to have to leave it at that. Thank you very much, Ansfria Janaku. Ansfria Janaku, Programs and Communications Manager, Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education. It's been great having you discuss with us. Also, great honor and privilege to have had Henry Kine. Henry Kine, Publicity Secretary, I understand, of the Committee for Human Rights, CDHR. It's a pleasure also having you. Henry Kine is also a legal practitioner and a great friend of the house. Time flies. We'll have the discussion with you again, Henry, over and over again.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Brilliant, Shona. We've touched base finally.
Yeah, extensively, because just as the last question I asked, the gentleman there, it will seem as if many Nigerians are not talking about this. Right. Or maybe they are on social media, but are they talking to their representatives? It's not just about you ranting on social media. Get to know your House of Rep members, get to know your Senate members, and talk to them. Send correspondences, and then you can share on social media that, okay, our represents me, I sent him this message, or I sent him that, or called him, or what have you, and this is what he said. Calling our representatives accountable will help our polity. Without a sound polity, without you can't get anything right.
Right. They're on recess now. They say they want to go and enjoy themselves. They make a big mistake. We'll look for them wherever they are. That holiday they promise themselves, we bombard them until they make the right decisions.
When the guys, it's only ram meat that people, it's only layer meat that people
they're not in Abuja. They've all come home now. They say they want to have, they're going to resume in September. But by the way, today is World Marrow Day. World Marrow Day. Today is my daughter's birthday. So, so she's been bugging me. She's been counting down over how many months now to the thing. But thank God it's finally here. I love you and thank you very much. If people, you know, daughters, how are they?
And their fathers, they just take your husband away from you. I can easily relate.
There's nothing you can do about it.
Anyways, let me greet my daughter. Oh, happy birthday to you. I wish you many happy returns of the day. Ensure that it buys you as many cakes as possible. Auntie She will send one to you and continue making us all proud. Many happy returns of the day, sweetheart.
Yeah, we'll do the French song together afterwards.
And if it's your birthday, so happy birthday. It's holiday on Tuesday and Wednesday. Please be moderate in all that you do and ensure that you share love with people. There are lots of needy people around. Share as much love. Don't just give to those that have already. Give to those that are in need. I am Sheung Oyedeji, wishing you a beautiful day. Good morning.
And I am Alvaro Obo. Asta Cubana.
I thought it was going to ask Sagafuni lie.
Asta Cubana.
At least I know that one.
You know that one, huh?
Yes, I do.